45 years, 0 name changes, new offices, more staff, improved technology to better serve you. Education, services, investments. Think real estate, think Marshall Reddick. Brokerage, property management, private lending, creating financial independence through real estate since 1979.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started here. Thanks so much for taking the time to get on. We really appreciate you guys signing on and taking the time to go over what we think to be a very exciting topic. And that's why long-term rentals are better than short-term rentals. If you notice the funny heart balloon behind us, it's because we had a bunch of balloons placed in here for Valentine's Day. We had a little party and we figured we might as well let one sit here behind us for the webinar. So real fun stuff.
Valentine's Day can't last long enough.
Right?
According to my wife, at least.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for logging on. My name is Tasso, and I'm accompanied this evening by Chris Carlson.
Hi, everybody.
So a little bit about me. I'm a licensed realtor and have been for about 6 years now. I received my bachelor's of business administration from Cal State University, Long Beach. I have 2 years of direct property management experience with Marshall Reddick in our property management division. I'm a Husky owner, a student pilot, and I love to play basketball. I've completed real estate transactions in California, Texas, and Tennessee, and I am an investor here at our Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund.
Tasso, I know a lot about you. I sit pretty close to you. I had no idea that you fly planes. It's a little terrifying and
right.
Interesting.
The story behind that is a very close buddy of mine that I went to high school and college with. His name is Austin. He's a pilot with Hawaiian Airlines, and he does private pilot lessons as well, and I was his first student. So it's pretty fun. I got to take you up one day.
He's putting his life in your hands. That's a good friend.
It's good. It's a lot easier than you'd think. It's kind of like driving a car, except a little bit higher.
Yeah, a little scarier.
Awesome. So the topics we're going to be going over tonight are, we're going to be introducing ourselves. We're going to be going through 12 differences between long-term and short-term rentals. We're going to be going over long-term and short-term rental financial breakdowns, and we're going to be looking at some bottom lines. We're going to go through qualities to look for in a property manager when making your selection. And we're going to be going through our Marshall Reddick E-rating book. So what we expect from you guys as attendees, and again, we're so grateful that you guys are all on here tonight. We hope that you learned something from the event. So please feel free to take out the iPad, the notepad, and just take some notes. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to type them in the chat, and we will take some time to go over them. If there's a question that maybe needs a little bit more attention or might require a little bit more detail, please feel free to write them down, and either Chris or myself will go over them with you in a consultation. If you see a link pop up, also please feel free to write it down so that you can search it up and take another look online. And always remember that a recording of this presentation along with the slides will be sent to your guys' email 24 hours after its completion. So we have some long-term clients on here today, but some of you may be new here with us. So we are Marshall Reddick. We are a full-service real estate firm that has 4 divisions, and I'm going to kind of talk through those. The first division is obviously our real estate brokerage. So we help investors and clients buy and sell primary homes as well as investment properties. Last year, we did around 900 transactions, 90% of which were investment transactions that we also manage, which brings us over to our second division, which is the property management department. So we take care of absolutely everything for the landlord in all of the states that we are in. So from maintenance, rent collections, renovation, tenant communication, just the whole 9 yards, so that all our clients need to do is collect their monthly rent check.
Yeah, and last year we just eclipsed at 3,000 properties under management, which is just a huge milestone for us, and just kind of a fantastic progress for our property management team.
Yeah, I'd agree. Our third division is our private money lender. So sometimes you can't qualify for conventional financing, and that's where Marshall Reddick comes in. So if you can't qualify for conventional financing, you can inquire about our private money lending services, and it's basically non-owner occupied recourse loans for borrowers doing either fix and flips or buying new construction. It's very unique, and if that's something you're interested in, we could set you up on an appointment with our private lending team. Our fourth division is our investment fund. So that's what I mentioned. Our mortgage fund is what I personally am invested in, and same with Chris. In the same way you can own an investment property, you can actually invest in the fund and receive a quarterly distribution. So a really cool way to kind of diversify in your portfolio. And I personally really enjoy always signing on to the webinars and learning about, what's going on.
Yeah, it's nice to nice to be a landlord, but it's also nice to be the bank sometimes. And with the investment mortgage fund, you're pretty much the bank, right? We're the lender on first lien position, non-owner occupied residential real estate, which basically means instead of collecting a rent check, you're collecting interest payments. So
yeah, absolutely,
really, really nice way to get some passive income into your bank account.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So real cool stuff there, and those are the 4 divisions within Marshall Reddick. So here are the offices in the states in which we do business. So this is a picture of all of the offices we have in the United States. So we're broadcasting live in our Newport Beach office currently. Chris and I are here working out of this office every day and scheduling our appointments just around Newport Beach. We also tap into our Pasadena office, which is in our LA market. So we do management in LA and OC here in California. And then obviously a huge footprint in Texas. We have our San Antonio, New Braunfels, and Austin office, all connected by the I-35 corridor. And then our 2 newest offices in Houston, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. So we're facilitating everything from, real estate sales to property management in all of these offices. Moving over to Tennessee, we have our Nashville, which is a little bit more down south, and our Clarksville office. I was recently there in the month of December. And then you'll see Kentucky right above, just highlighted. It's kind of hard to see because Clarksville is covering it. But we also have a footprint in the Oak Grove and Hopkinsville area in Kentucky. And then our offices in Florida. So really cool stuff. So what makes a good market? We're not in these markets by accident. There's a lot of research and due diligence that's done before selecting which market that we proceed in.
Definitely. In fact, if you jump on our website and you look at a property, investment property in any single one of our markets, you'll see a data packet kind of underlining all of these 7 characteristics, right, which are really necessary to understand before you guys think about investing in any market, whether we're located in it or just if you're thinking about any particular market in general.
Yeah. So when you're shopping around as an investor to see what state you're going to do business with in or buy property in, you should look for all of these characteristics, not 6 of them, not 5 of them, not 1 of them, but they should have all of the characteristics in this market. So we're really looking at the job market. What does that mean? We must have stable employment, meaning that unemployment is at under the national average. So really looking for a strong job market. We're looking for low vacancy rate, right? We need to have movement in the market. We need to make sure that properties are actually renting and that they're not just sitting 60, 90, 120 days on the market. We need to make sure that statistically properties are renting and they're listed, for rent at a price that is getting them to move, right? We're looking for economic diversity. There shouldn't be just one main, employer. We should be looking for a bunch of different industries. We should be looking for tech. We should be looking for healthcare. Military is a huge one in a lot of our markets. Government jobs, all of these add up to a very economically diverse job market. We're looking for housing affordability. So this essentially means that investors have accessibility to properties without massive amounts of capital to enter these spaces. So affordable housing. It's a little bit difficult here in California, but in our other markets, it's a little bit more open as far as housing affordability, right? We're wanting to make sure that the state is landlord friendly, right? We want strong education in these markets. Strong education essentially means white collar jobs, which ultimately mean to promotions and higher rent, which ultimately means, a little bit more of an ability to secure just a stable and long-term tenant. And we want to see reliable property management. So we want to have a lot of options for property managers. We don't want just one mom and pop shop, and if something happens to the property manager, you don't have anywhere to turn. You want to be able to look up companies online and have a wide variety.
Yeah, that's just kind of a big reason why we don't advise being in small markets, right? Where there's not a variety of property managers and, your property manager, Susie property manager retires and you're kind of stuck on your own, right?
Yeah.
So something to think about when you guys are looking at markets is maybe larger metropolitan areas are going to have all of these characteristics in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Always love this picture. So this was recently taken at our Christmas party in December. So these are our newest updated pictures. If you've joined us on other webinars, you might have seen the old ones. But Top left is our New Braunfels office, so our Texas team. Top right is also in Texas in San Antonio. Bottom left is our Florida office. Right there in the middle is the Newport Beach team. So as you can see, a little bit of a bigger team. We kind of have our accountants here. Our private lending is out of our Newport Beach office. And then our Tennessee team. I had the privilege of hanging out with them a little bit earlier or late last year. So really good time. Tennessee is a beautiful state.
They like to cut it up out there in Tennessee.
Oh yeah. Really cool. And with all that, I'm going to introduce you guys to Chris Carlson. I have had the privilege of working really close with him these past 2 years, and what an awesome guy. So Chris, please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction,
Yeah.
Tasa. Great job. Well, yeah, we're going to jump into everything here in reference to short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. But just a quick note about myself. I've been working, I have had the pleasure of working with investors for the last decade plus, and have been licensed in multiple states, have sold property in more than 4 states now. I own out-of-state investment property. I invest in the mortgage fund. I've helped clients with a variety of investment strategies like 1031s. I'm buying up fixer-upper properties and doing multifamily value add, all sorts of fun things. And it's just been a fantastic experience all around to work with Marshall Reddick, where I can kind of help all of our clients utilize all of the experience and knowledge that we have as an institution to help them achieve their goals. As an advisor, we get to do that every day and consult with our clients. It's really a fun.
It's really a privilege.
Yeah, really a fun job. So we look forward to your guys' questions here, and of course, feel free to jump into the chat if you want to inquire with us on any particular slide. We'll be happy to get to your questions. So Tasso and I are going to cover some main differences here between, I guess, LTR and STRs, long-term rental versus short-term rental, the pros and cons. I think we're going to say that the pros lie heavily in favor of the long-term rental versus the short-term rental, and we're going to break down why that might be the case. So number one is just the amount of capital that's required for a short-term rental to get it off the ground, right? You're going to have to pay for furniture, knives and forks in the kitchen. You're going to have hangings on the walls. You're going to have rugs. You're going to all the grill, maybe a hot tub, right? If you're in the mountains, or pay for the maintenance of a pool if it's in a hot climate like Joshua Tree or Palm Springs. So all of that requires a lot of investment. So, and not only does it require upfront investment, it requires ongoing maintenance, right? You're going to have a lot of people coming in and out of your short-term rental property day in, day out, week in, week out, using it I would say pretty hard, people, right? Like people aren't coming into short-term rentals to just like sit back and relax necessarily. Usually they're having a good old time in your house, and you might have to encounter wine stains on the couch kind of thing. So you're going to be dealing with that upkeep and maintenance, and that's going to cost quite a lot of capital over time in order to keep it rentable over many, many years and desirable for those short-term rental folks. Secondly is the cost of utilities. So just from an operational cost perspective, you're going to have a lot of out-of-pocket on utilities for short-term rentals. On a long-term rental, I've got my tenants paying all the gas, all the electric, all the water, landscaping, gardening, all that stuff. That's really on the tenant. But on a short-term rental property, that's not the case. You're paying for the gas, the electric, the water, but they're also expecting you to have internet and cable, right? The last thing you want is as a short-term rental guest, is to walk into your nice Airbnb and you want to kick back and relax, and there's no Netflix, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, another thing is, like, I remember recently, or over the summertime, I was at an Airbnb in Palm Springs. The first thing I went is straight to the thermostat and turned it all the way down.
Yeah.
It's just things like that, little things that are happening, and these, ACs and all these appliances are being overused and just not taken care of. That's a very common trend.
I totally agree. I was in a Airbnb up in the mountains with my wife a couple, I think it was in December, yeah. And in December, there was a hot tub out there, and we had the hot tub cranked up the whole time, right? You're never thinking about turning off the heat, right? You want the thing always ready to go. So that's going to cost a lot of money as the owner, the proprietor of that establishment, of that property. So keep that in mind from a utility perspective. We also look at the stability and consistency in short-term rental. When it's good on short-term rentals, it's real good, right? Like you've got people coming in and out all the time, you're getting a lot of income coming through. But if you're in a market where it's the attraction to that particular property is because of its location, maybe it's based on the season, right? So my example is the mountains, your example is in a hot climate, right? Well, if you got a property up in the mountains, you're probably not going to get a ton of folks staying into your rental property during the summer, right? And vice versa in a hot climate. During the winter, it's great, but during the summer, you can't really exist in, Joshua Tree or Palm Springs. So it's going to be really attractive during certain times of the year, but other times you're going to have major, major vacancy. And that can be really unsettling for folks, I think, as an investment. It's just going long periods without rental income. And last but not least on this particular slide is the cost of time to manage a short-term rental property is incredibly demanding, right? I would say it's more like a full-time job if you have a few of these and you don't have a property manager. I would argue you shouldn't have any residential real estate investments without a property manager, but it's really not even sustainable on a short-term rental. You're going to get calls for every little tiny thing, right? Every single person that's a guest at your property is new to that property, right? They don't know where to park. They don't know how to turn on the lights. They don't know how to turn on the hot tub. They don't know how to heat the pool. They don't know how to change the thermostat, right? So they're calling you for all those little things, and you're dealing with multiple of those guests per week. So I think that's a big challenge on a time constraint. Folks are probably making more money in their day jobs than they are dealing with calls on their short-term rentals. But it's a lot more scalable on a long-term rental. I would argue that, especially if you have a property manager. I think the last time I heard from my tenants on my properties was 6 weeks ago for a maintenance issue where I had to talk to my property manager. So you can go months at a time, without dealing with any issues with your tenants.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really curious to know before we go on to the next slide. We're so happy to see so many people logged on this evening. Would you please take a moment to type in the chat if you are new to real estate, if you own investment property, or if maybe you're considering it, just so we can know, because one thing that Chris and I always talk about is communication with tenants. And if you know, it's super important to understand these things. So I'm just curious to gauge, if you guys could take a moment to type in the chat if you are currently investors or if you haven't secured any property yet. We're just curious to see kind of where that's at.
Or if you're thinking about the pros and cons yourself, maybe you're eyeing some markets that are good for short-term rentals. But the one thing that we also want to make clear is, there's been I guess a lot of hype in the marketplace for short-term rentals when it comes to the amount of rental income you're going to receive. And I think for a good period of years, especially during COVID, that was absolutely attainable. But if you're looking at this chart, this is the revenue collapse of Airbnb in some of the major metro markets that were really popular. Breckenridge and Seattle and Panama City and Florida, Phoenix and Austin, right? These were great markets for Airbnb. And why is there so much vacancy or so much income loss? Well, I think it's just an oversaturation of the market. So you got a lot of supply of Airbnbs. You got to be a top operator. You got to have, to be successful in Airbnb or short-term rentals or VRBO, you got to have a lot of reviews online. You got to have the best pictures. And if you don't have that traction, it's really hard to gain new clients for your property, new tenants, right? And then secondly, not just a supply, but it's also demand, right? Folks are traveling out of the country now. They weren't able to do that during COVID. So COVID was really hot for folks just trying to go to their town next door, the mountains down the, a couple hours away for us in Southern California, because we couldn't travel to, hop on a plane and travel to Hawaii so easily, right? So now Airbnb demand is also muted when supply is high. So you're going to see a lot of dropped income here.
Yeah, absolutely. Eduardo, Marquetta, Oscar, Chase, Tim, thank you so much for answering. Yeah, it's really good to see, who's on today and coming from a perspective of, if you guys are looking to buy or experienced investors. It's really interesting to go through this and see what, the audience we're presenting to. So thank you guys so much, and everybody else who has answered. Caesar, thank you so much. David, thank you so much. So going on to a couple of other items. So when thinking about Airbnbs, when placing them on the market, one set of renters, maybe 20 people in a home a year on average, right? Versus, and that's factoring in a long-term rental versus a short-term rental. You're maybe seeing 300 plus people just in and out of your home, and you don't know who these people are. You haven't run any profiles on them or done any background checks, so it's a little bit unsure. There's a lot more wear and tear, right? So significantly higher liability in short-term rentals due to usage, kind of like we talked about. I ran into that Airbnb and the first thing I did is I cranked on the AC. So it's running and it's blown and people are taking advantage of just their short stay. So due to usage and unfamiliarity of the home, they treat it like a hotel versus their home. That's a really good point. So, these are things to look for. This is your investment. This is something that you've worked very hard to obtain and acquire. And, the way it's treated is super important. There are very costly repairs that come with misusage, right? So your neighbors might call you and be upset, due to traffic, noise, nuisance, parking, etc. We've all heard those horror stories about Airbnb parties. I had a really good client of mine who had an Airbnb, and he checked his camera one day and it was a reserve. And he actually found a group of fraternity guys who had rented the Airbnb for a retreat and had absolutely trashed the property. And he went there the next day and he saw his home just in absolute chaos. So there's, some things like that could really scare you, and you don't have any, you don't know who's in and out. You don't have an ironclad lease. It could be,
Definitely. I mean, before anybody moves into a property that we manage at Marshall Reddick or just my long-term investment property myself, I know their credit score. I know I literally know their social security number, right?
Right.
We know their income and their landlord references. We've spoken to their references, their criminal background, right? You don't really have that same level at all, honestly, of knowledge on anybody that's coming into your short-term rental. So certainly a key factor in increasing your liability and risk for the short-term rental.
So like it mentions in number 8, much more accountability for tenants in long-term rentals due to the security deposit, lengthy lease contract, which at Marshall Reddick, I think we write some of the best leases, legally allowed, right? Yeah. So we're completely protecting you as an investor. Chris and I both do, we both have situations where we're speaking to landlords who used to, either have their property managed by a realtor who wasn't doing it full time, or by they're managing it themselves. And we took a look at their lease and we compared it to our Marshall Reddick lease, and there's just night and day difference on specific items that will cover you as a landlord that are super important in the long-term stay of your tenancy. Yeah. Those don't exist in short-term rentals, which could be very, very scary. And then obviously versus no security deposit and legally binding contract in short-term rentals.
Yeah, there's not much financial reserve, without a security deposit. If that tenant does damage your property in a short-term rental, I mean, what are you going to do, right? Chase after them for collections? It's probably not going to happen. But with a long-term rental, you might have, in California, our average rent's, $3,500, $4,000. You get a substantial security deposit.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a key factor. We, believe that if you're going to do short-term rental or long-term rental, you absolutely need a property manager. The cost of property management for short-term rental is very expensive, and it's for good reasons, because it's all of the things that we just discussed, right? It's because you have so many people coming in and out. You're going to have so many complaints. You're going to have so much maluse of the features of your property that a property manager is going to charge you a lot more, right? So you got 20% property management fees on average for the industry versus 7 to 9% of your gross income on long-term rentals. Insurance costs, because of that increased liability, significantly higher. We're in a very challenging market right now for insurance, especially in California or Florida, or really a lot of the markets that are great for Airbnbs are also the markets that are probably the most challenging for short-term rental coverage for your insurance on your property. So if you think getting insurance now is tough in the mountains or by the beach or by a water lake or whatever, it's going to be even tougher if you're trying to convert your policy into short-term rental. Just in general, taxes from your income that you generate are going to be higher on short-term rental. It's taxed as ordinary income versus passive income in the long term. Mm-hmm. And then for me, number 12, this is the biggest reason, if I was to ever consider short-term rentals, is the biggest argument against it. Is honestly, I invest in real estate because of control, right? I can control the asset. I can't invest in the stock market, but I can't walk into Tesla's boardroom and spank Elon for not doing the right thing, right? But what I can do is I can control my investment property, right? I can improve it. I can choose the tenant. And what this does is takes away your control, because the statewide and local municipalities can regulate the use of Airbnbs, the number of Airbnbs. And if they take that away from you and your entire strategy was based upon underwriting as a short-term rental, you're out of luck if they ban your short-term rental in your market, right? Anaheim, Santa Ana, San Diego, Palm Springs all have various ordinances and bans. So really something that highly consider, that if what happens if you can't do short-term rental, does your deal still make sense, right? And if it doesn't, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's take an example of how to underwrite a deal, right? Let's just assume that everything we said is going in one ear and out the other, and you want to still underwrite a deal for short-term versus long-term. This is how you're going to do it. This is an example of a property that came our way from an owner that had it on the market as a short-term rental. Toss, if you want to hit the next slide here so we can look at the property. So this is actually right in Newport Beach in our backyard for our office. And it's a duplex. It's a 4-bed, 4-bath, one unit main house, 2-bed, 2-bath rear house. And it's just, it's one property away from the beach, ideal location for Airbnb, or for that matter, long-term rental, very desirable community for both. Highly attractive for tourists. If you're in Southern California, you know where Newport Beach is. So, but we'll kind of underwrite the deal from both perspectives. So, from the rental breakdown on the short-term rental, like how do we want to look at the income that's coming in, and how do we want to look at the operating expenses? So we did the data analysis and talked to the owners based on their experience, and per month they were getting $19,000 when it was occupied. Key factor, when it was occupied, for the 4-bed, 4-bath, and $5,000 a month for the 2-bed, 2-bath, $24,000 total gross income when occupied. But, and this is data you can look up, this was their experience, there's a 49% vacancy rate for Airbnb in Newport Beach. And that's exactly what they experienced. Well, they only had it occupied half the time, right? No one wants to rent a beach house in the middle of winter and jump into the Pacific Ocean when it's, I think, 56 degrees. We did a cold plunge in next to Newport Beach the other day, and it was, no one wants to get in that water for very long. So
2-3 minutes.
Yeah, 2-3 minutes, right?
Drive for 5, 2-3, I'm out of there.
Yeah, in 2-3 minutes you're out of the water, right? So no one wants to do a beach vacation from Kansas or whatever at Newport Beach in February. So you're not going to have it occupied very long. So you're going to really have to shrink that expected gross income down by half. Okay. You can look at vacancy rates. We're going to show you this on AirDNA. You have to sign up for an account, but you will be able to find that type of vacancy rate for any market. I highly suggest, if you're looking at short-term rentals with any seriousness, you do get an account with AirDNA. It's a very fantastic company. Now you also have to take away their property management fees. Like we discussed, you got 20% of your income is going to have to be taken away for property management. In this case, with the occupancy rate, it's about $2,500 of actual management fees. And then you have higher expenses for maintenance, like we talked about, higher insurance costs, utility costs, and you've got to list this thing on Airbnb and you got to give them 3% of your rent. Man, oh man. So you shrink all of that down, okay? Your actual total income is going to be around $7,200 net, right? That's your net operating income. So at the end of the day, it looks really great on paper, 24 grand when it's humming along, but at the end of it, at the end of the year, you're probably going to average $7,200 a month.
And Chris, looking at these, I'd say these, the expenses that we're putting in here, they're actually pretty conservative, right? Like we're not grossly reaching. These are very conservative figures. 20% management fee is an absolute certainty for Airbnb management. You can go call 10 companies. I don't think you'll get less than 20%.
Yeah, I've seen as low as like 17 and as high as 25.
Yeah.
So this is the average.
51% occupancy rate. Airbnbs are in Newport Beach vacant half of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's very conservative figure. 15% of actual rent on maintenance. There's a lot of maintenance going down. There's a lot of damage, a lot of little things.
Probably on the low side, to be honest.
I agree with you. Yeah.
And same with utilities. But
utilities, same deal. So
on that big of a house, you're probably going to exceed $300 a month for your total utility costs.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
That's very conservative.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then we're going to take a look now at the long-term breakdown.
This is the, by the way, this is the AirDNA data. If you go on AirDNA's website, you're going to see on average the occupancy rate. So really good information for you guys to find.
Newport Beach, 76. Yep, 50%, 51% occupancy rate. Yeah.
And then on the long-term rental perspective, well, how would you break down your income that you're going to achieve? Well, we did the comps here. $8,500 for the 4-bed, and then $5,500 for the 2-bed, 2-bath. That's $14,000 total of gross income. We actually manage this property now. We know those numbers are accurate because we achieved them, right? We were actually rented them out. That's how much money we're receiving every month. We have an 8% management fee on this particular property. And this is a very conservative occupancy rate of 93%. Across our portfolio, I mean, it's probably closer to 97, 98% occupancy rate. And we're kind of tapering that down. We'll show you the data on that. And then you got a 50% leasing fee every few years because your tenants are staying in there on average on a single family house or a really beautiful home over in Newport Beach, 3 to 5 years, right? Minimum, especially on a larger home, they're going to be in there for a while. So you don't have to pay that leasing fee every year, and you don't have to pay lease renewal fees. Well, you do have to pay lease renewal fees every year, but in relation to the expense of a leasing fee, it's much smaller. And the average maintenance is going to be a lot lower because those folks are going to know how to use the property. They're going to be familiar with the property, and they're going to want to maintain it like it's their home because they're going to be there for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So your actual net operating income on this is going to be substantially higher than it would be on a long-term rental. It's several $1,000s higher per month on average. So just an argument for why long-term rental for this particular property is better. I would suggest that you guys do your own due diligence, look at the numbers, look at some of the data that we're presenting here, and kind of do your own research. But this is how you would kind of compare and contrast those options on the single property. And Tasa, if you want to share the next slide here, this is actually Collier's occupancy rates for multifamily property in Orange County. As you guys can see, 96% occupancy rate. We predicted 93. On average, you're going to have a higher occupancy rate than what even we analyzed. So, and really the bottom line, folks, is I truly think short-term rentals only make sense if you have a vacation home that you want to visit a few times a year, and you want to supplement those expenses by doing a short-term Airbnb or VRBO, right? The real question is, like, do you want to work 5 times harder to make, a bit more money and have 5 times the amount of expenses? Does that option really seem like the best option from an investment strategy, right? So I truly think the goal for any real estate investor should be, how do I scale this? And I think short-term rentals are very challenging to scale unless it's your full-time job. I just don't think it works as a passive investment, But all that to say that if you do want to think about long-term rentals, if you guys have an investment property that you have right now and you're not sure which direction you're going to go, short-term versus long-term, these are the qualities that you do want to look for in a property manager, specifically a long-term property manager. Right?
Oh yeah.
Importance of a strong website and software, so we can attract really good tenants, and it's super easy for you to use.
We use Appfolio here, which is the #1 rated property management software. It is extremely thorough, and it has smart features, sets reminders that allow us to keep up with the everyday tasks that are required to effectively manage property. Super important that you have a very strong and proactive software.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're interviewing property managers, the #1 question I would ask any management company is, how do you handle maintenance? And Tasa, what's your answer for Marshall Reddick?
Man, I spent a majority of my time in property management doing maintenance right out of college. Fantastic. I loved every second of it. But I'll tell you what, there are cases in property management companies where they'll actually upcharge you for maintenance, and they'll put it hidden in their contract when you sign with them. So something as simple as a garbage disposal is an example I like to use all the time. Our garbage disposal is an item that goes out sometimes in investment properties, and the tenants will always let us know, right? So what is your property manager doing? #1, I'm taking it a little bit back, but are they immediately sending one of their in-house maintenance techs to go and hit the little red reset button on the bottom of the disposal, or go to flip the breaker?
Charging $150.
Right. And not only are they charging you $150, they have a 20% markup. So, all of that gets included onto the back end, and they're putting their letterhead on the invoice and sending it to you, versus a company that is not upcharging you for maintenance, that is calling the tenant to troubleshoot to try to get the item resolved, right?
Yep.
And then ultimately saving you on things like that, 150 here, 150 there, 200 there, it all adds up. So we never upcharge on maintenance. We find it to be an extreme conflict of interest, and that is something that you should absolutely ask the property managers that you're looking to work with.
Maintenance? I actually received a call yesterday from somebody thinking about firing their property manager on a duplex in LA, and they're interviewing us. And I started asking him how they handled maintenance with his current property manager. And he said, well, they just seem to never fix the problems. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. How do they handle maintenance? Do they have in-house maintenance or third-party maintenance? Oh, they have an in-house contractor and they use them for everything. Oh, well, great. So they're incentivized to make money when you're losing money.
Huge profit center for them.
Yeah, it's a big profit center. So make sure that if you're interviewing a property manager, that you're selecting one that's not profiting off of maintenance. And it's cost for service, which is more important to you guys, right? I think ultimately in most things in life, you get what you pay for it. And while Marshall Reddick may not be the cheapest property manager, we're going to provide the best possible service. And I think our cost of service is in line with our competitors because we're incredibly responsive. We're always there for our clients and for our tenants. We have 24/7 emergency maintenance line. We have tons of online reviews. And we really suggest you guys jump online and Google, on Yelp, on Zillow, and check us out. And, we don't hold your feet to the fire if you need to cancel with us. We do have a fairly simple cancellation policy that Tasso and I can explain if for some reason you had a question about that. So this is what you guys should be looking at if you are interviewing property managers. And this is our philosophy, we only should be making money when the landlord's making money, right? We don't want to charge you guys vacancies. We don't charge you vacancies fees. We don't charge you startup fees or administration fees or anything like that. It's very simple. We have a link on our website where you can check out all of our fee structures. And we want to build this relationship over years and over a long period of time because this is it's kind of a marriage, right? Property management's like a marriage and a contract.
Absolutely.
We're going to be working with each other on something that's very valuable to you, right? On this property that's a huge asset to you, that you probably have a lot of equity in and a lot of your savings tied up in. So we want to treat that very, very seriously by building trust and value for you guys. And your property managers and the folks you work with here at Marshall Reddick are very investment minded. My own investment property and many of our employees too, and invest in our mortgage fund and understand private money lending and all that good stuff so we can better serve you guys.
Excellent. I'd like to take some time to answer a couple of questions that have come in. Clayton, thank you so much for asking what our management fees are. Did we touch on that?
Yeah, we haven't touched on our management fees. So it depends on what type of asset you have, and it depends on what market you're in. Real briefly, for single family homes, if you're in Southern California, then it's going to be 7%. If you're going to be in our other markets, it's 9%. It's not because we have less of a service here in California. It's just because obviously our rental prices are quite a bit higher. So that's why we have a little bit slightly higher fee in other markets. But if you have multifamily, it's a little bit different structure. And I would just suggest that, type in the chat if you want to meet with us. We'll be happy to talk about your specific situation.
And again, what those fees cover is a full service white glove management, essentially where we handle everything for you and deliver your check directly to you guys. So you'll put in all your information and that's how it's handled. Dylan, who handles maintenance, property manager? So we do have an assigned maintenance group that completely handles maintenance. So typically with maintenance, it's either going to be maintenance requests that come in the form of a request from a tenant or a renovation that's happening after a tenant has vacated. So we do have a maintenance department that is specifically paid to handle all maintenance requests. So apart from property managers and tenant coordinators, the maintenance team, who is all tied in with the rest of the management team, is specifically focused on the maintenance of your property to handle it, absolutely correctly and efficiently and in a cost-effective manner. So we'll keep moving here.
Tassi, you want to cover the types of properties you manage?
Yeah. So again, Chris mentioned that depending on the type of property, you own and are acquiring management on, it will depend on the percentage that, we charge to manage it. So we do manage single family homes, duplexes, condos, townhomes, multifamily dwellings, apartment buildings up to 20 units. It's very important that everyone is aware that the properties must be unoccupied or unoccupied with documentation.
Yeah, by documentation, we just mean lease agreements. So if you have a multifamily property with tenants in it, happy to manage it. We would just ask for the lease agreements. So what's next, Tasso, if folks have additional questions?
Yeah, sorry, was reading a question and I'll get, thank you so much, Eduardo. We'll get right back to you. So if everything kind of has sparked your interest and you're interested in learning more, you would schedule an appointment with an advisor like Chris or myself, or some of the other advisors we have in the office. And basically, we're going to take some time to understand your criteria and what you're looking to achieve. We're going to get a good understanding of your financial goals to help direct you in the area on which might best meet your criteria, right? So some investors and clients might have specific goals that will be tailored better to a Texas new construction duplex. Others might have goals that might look better with a single family in Tennessee, right? Yeah. Taxes, insurance, if you're looking for appreciation, if you're looking for maybe something that cash flows a little bit better, if you're looking to one and done versus if you're looking to maybe acquire a certain amount over a certain period of time. So case by case basis, we're going to kind of look at, checkpoint number one, income or long-term wealth, right? When are you looking to retire? Where, are you at in your investment journey or in your work life? How much
experience? Yeah, that's
super important.
That's a really big one. I have clients asking me all the time about really interesting strategies that I just ask them, how much time do you have to commit, right? Like home flipping. Well, I've helped flip homes. I've done wholesaling. I've done all sorts of interesting things. And trust me, you got to have a knack for cold calling 6 hours a day in order to find those deals.
Totally.
So hope you enjoy quitting your full-time 6-figure job and cold calling for deals to do your next flip, right? It's to be profitable. I mean, you could go buy a house on the MLS and try and flip it. We'll see how well that goes for you. Usually they're not the best deals. So generally speaking, if you want to do something really, really interesting, you're going to have a really, really profitable, you're going to have to spend a lot more time in it, or you're going to have to spend a lot more capital, or you're going to have a ton of knowledge that you've built up over many, many years of real estate investing. So risk tolerance is a really big thing. I mentioned flipping. Yeah, you can have some big upside there, but incredibly risky. You have a little nuances, little bumps in the road with the market. Flipping in Southwest Florida right now, probably not the best thing depending on your risk tolerance. So of course, financing is a big deal. If you can qualify for conventional financing, that's going to really open up the breadth of different real estate deals that you can do. And of course, this boils down to everybody is what can you afford, right? I would love to own a 30-unit building in Southern California, but maybe out of my price range right now. So that's going to heavily depend on what you can afford.
So we'll use essentially this calculator to determine, the perfect investment property for you. Chris and I have facilitated transactions in all of the states in which we do business, right? So we'll look at these and we'll gauge kind of in the direction. We'll give you a lot of information on the markets to, allow you to get the most amount of information as possible before making your decision. So, in our calculator here, and we'll kind of jump into this a little bit more, we have luxury A, B, C, and D class, right? On the luxury A class side, you tend to see a lot more appreciation as time goes on, right? Purchase prices are typically a little bit higher, and you tend to see a little bit higher of a tenant quality, right? Moving down into, CD could be a lot lower purchase price, maybe a little bit lower tenant quality, but you tend to see maybe a little bit more cash flow. B, we always use the acronym of both.
Yeah,
so we use, appreciation for A, both B, cash flow, or excuse me, B is both, C is cash flow, and D, we kind of joke around here and say, don't, areas that are a little bit mixy and, you might cash flow a lot, but you might run into a lot of other areas that just take away from your cash flow. But they, again, might be at a lower price point. So we'll come to understand all of these criteria and, guide you in the direction that will help you accomplish the goals.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head here. And how does one person determine a property class? It's actually pretty simple, at least the way that we've designed it. So you just need to know what the median single family home price is in whatever metropolitan area that you're thinking of investing. That's the baseline information that you need to know. Every metropolitan area has a different median single family home price. Right here, sitting in Orange County, our metropolitan area single family home price is right around $1 million, a little over $1 million, right? So if you can look at this little slide here, you see that if you're at 100% of the median single family home price, you're probably right on the border of an A or a B class. So if you're joining us from Southern California, where home prices are exorbitantly expensive, think about that $1.1 million property, probably in a pretty good area, it's not a rough area. You're going to attract nice quality tenants, probably a 3-bed, 2-bath, and a decent school system, fairly well maintained. So that's something to think about. But as you scale down in price, maybe 80% of $1 million, well, it's 800,000. You're going to have maybe a little bit worse quality property, worse quality neighborhood. Maybe the crime is a little bit higher in that area. And as you go down, down, and down, you're into D class, 50%. It's hard to find $500,000 single family homes around us, maybe a condo, right? But if you're thinking apples to apples, single family homes, a $500,000 single family home these days are going to be in pretty rough shape or a pretty rough neighborhood, right? And that might be more of a cash flow investment. Same thing applies in every market, right? So the median single family home price in San Antonio is about $325,000. 50% of that's 175 grand. That would be a very rough neighborhood in San Antonio. So think about what type of tenant you want to attract, what type of experience you want to have, appreciation versus cash flow, and we'll be able to find you the market and the property that matches all of your goals.
We're going to take some time to just quickly answer 2 questions. Is Marshall Reddick able to coordinate repairs after my tenant has vacated? Absolutely. So we touched on the maintenance department just being able to facilitate that whole coordination of make ready. Depending on the scope of the project, you will speak to your assigned maintenance manager, and they'll be able to provide you estimates from the contractors that we have. And again, coming from that property management background, we have fantastic relationships with general contractors, plumbers, electricians, HVAC, just everything in order to help facilitate this whole if it's a remediation or rehab of the property, we're absolutely able to facilitate that. Okay, and then does Marshall Reddick have legal representation? So yeah, absolutely. If the time comes that there's a situation, we tend to avoid that by extremely good tenant placement. But if the time ever comes that an eviction happens, Marshall Reddick has an eviction coordination fee, and will actually do all the boots on the ground legwork for you. All legal costs, of course, are required to be paid by the landlord, but we're able to help facilitate that.
The eviction coordination fee is a whopping $100.
$100
for the huge fee for
all the paperwork and all the coordination. I think that's fantastic.
That means representing you in court. It means posting notices on the tenant's door, communicating with your attorney, you and your tenant. It's a very, very lengthy process for an eviction, especially in California. We mitigate that risk through our screening process. In fact, we had 1 eviction in all of 2024 in the LA and Southern California area, and that was a tenant we inherited, not a tenant we
right.
paid. So that's out of hundreds of properties. So you've got a very low risk for eviction if you have a special tenant. We spoke about this. This is determining your property class in the metropolitan statistical area. You can log on to the National Association of Realtors, find this for yourself. If you've got a property, and I think Eduardo's on here. I see Eduardo asking some questions. He's got some properties in Mississippi. So Eduardo, if you want to look up your market, you can, and see if you're buying C, B, D, A class, right? Based on the metropolitan price for a single family home, that median single family home price. And we spoke on this. This is a really neat little graph on understanding your property classes. A class is going to attract that professional white collar tenant, and I would argue buyer. B class, mid-manager, young adult. C class, hourly employee and blue collar. And D class probably going to be on your low income subsidized housing, think Section 8 and housing vouchers. And there's a strategy for folks that do that. I say don't do it, especially if you're a newer investor. That's a challenging strategy to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And more importantly is really understanding when you're buying a particular property class, you're going to have differing degrees of maintenance and expenses, right? For vacancy and maintenance, because if you have an A-class property, those tenants tend to stay in that property for longer periods of time. Maybe their A-class property, they're A-class tenants, so they used to own a home, right? So they know how to maintain a home. They know how to care for the lawn service and not overuse the furnace, right? The case may not be for your C-class tenant, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And they tend to go vacant for longer periods of time because there's less demand for them. So
a really cool thing too is a lot of our investors who are here, wherever they are, here in California, investing out of state in Texas and Tennessee, builders are offering really good builder warranties, and they're not even looking at any maintenance costs at all.
Yeah.
Especially something goes out, your first year is completely covered by the builder and everything is brand new, versus, you're buying a C-class resale in a market that's not so favorable. And, the 6 months after you purchase it, your AC goes out and there's a $13,000 bill.
My first investment property was in
huge.
Chicago, and the building was built in 1889. So the building had a few issues.
And some may argue that you can find these things in the actual inspection report when purchasing the property, but a lot of the times these things come up through the tenant's stay. So super important that these are all factored in. And then just another calculator here, and this is
how you establish vacancy.
Exactly. So 365 days in a year, right? And then you're multiplying it by that 8%, right? So 29.2 days of the year you're expecting to
have a vacancy of some sort.
That's
fairly conservative, especially for A-class properties.
We at Marshall Reddick have, a general guideline that if priced correctly, which our leasing agents are very good at running comparative market analysis, you have fantastic leasing agents through Marshall Reddick, and you can rest assured of that. We like to lease our properties in under 30 days. So this is, exactly spot on with what we're explaining to our landlords and what they can expect, right? When I spent a lot of time leasing, I absolutely loved doing leases, and I would get my properties rented in as soon as possible. It would be a goal for me. And I would really factor in, the quality of a tenant. So 30 days is just around what you want to be. If your property is sitting over 30 days, it's typically a little uncomfortable, and you should have made the adjustments prior to those 30 days in order to get it leased.
100%.
Lowering the price, updating the marketing, so many things that you can do to just get the property out there. It shouldn't be sitting longer than 30 days.
There's three big factors in why a property sits on the market for any length of time. It's your price, it's your photos, and it's your leasing agent. Are they answering the phone? Are they showing the property? Do they look good, smell nice, right, when they show the house? And obviously the condition of the house takes it into place too. But if you've got a great leasing agent and you got great marketing photos and your property's sitting on the market, it's probably because it's overpriced, or maybe it wasn't in good condition when it was being shown.
And totally broken down by property class, right? So A class, B class, C class, what's your vacancy rate? What could working with a good property manager do to lower this vacancy rate? All in all, that's taking the necessary steps to get the property leased in under 30 days. Super important. Placing the tenant, and screening is a whole different conversation in itself, but I think that's one of the most important parts of it all.
And if you guys are interested in more educational resources here, please do download our free property rating ebook, which goes into all of these considerations in much greater depth than we can handle here. There's a link. We've got plenty of educational resources on our website, in addition to the Reddick property rating ebook. This thing is an evergreen manual, so highly recommend you guys read through this. It'll be a long-lasting document that you can, take into your entire real estate investing journey.
Absolutely. Super good read. You can also learn more about our services and fees on our website. It is extremely cool to navigate through. Invest, right now it's looking at services, property management, and you can see all of our fees in all of our different markets. You can also go to invest and look at a lot of our properties. Borrow is very good. You can learn about our private financing. Take some time to navigate through our website. I think that you guys would really have a good time on there.
And I would say this is probably the most important thing. See what customers are saying about if you do it for when you're going to spend $30 on a hamburger or sushi dinner or something, you're jumping on Yelp, right? Definitely jump on Yelp when you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars of your hard-earned money with private money lending or property management, buying real estate investments, right? If this is what you do for a small little, it's a lot of research for a small little purchase, you should definitely do it when you're talking to a great property management company.
I recognize the name on here. Marquetta is on here. She just left us a very nice 5-star review. We helped her out. So thank you, Marquetta. I see you on here. But yeah, please
that's
take some
amazing.
time to look through our reviews. They're a very good indication of how we do work and how we take pride in doing good work.
So what can you expect from sitting down on a consultation with myself or Tasso here? It's really just a line of inquiry so that we can help you on your pathway to real estate investing, whether that's just switching from your current property manager, that might be some of you folks on the call, or whether it's buying a new property for your very first time investing. We're really just going to try and figure out your goals, help you evaluate your options, decide on your time frame, and obviously based on when you're ready to pull the trigger on something, and then set your criteria based on your goals, right? If you're looking for cash flow, well, maybe we're not looking for $1 million single family homes, right? We're going to look at something else and maybe a different market. And depending on your criteria, we're going to look at the various market that match your experience, match your risk tolerance, all that good stuff. And then once we've kind of determined all those factors, then we introduce you to all the key players, right? Your lender, your agent, that's your boots on the ground in whatever market you decide to invest in, your insurance broker, inspector, all the different parties, and of course our property management team in all of our markets. So lots to sink our teeth in, and we would love to sit down with you guys when you have a moment and learn more about your goals. See how we can help you out.
It'll be great.
And thanks again for stopping by, hanging out with us. Hopefully y'all learned something today about long-term rentals and short-term rentals. And if you guys have any questions about any real estate topic, we're here to help.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, guys. It was a pleasure. And we will stay in touch and talk very soon. Have a fantastic evening and lots of success in 2025.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.